Benvenuti questa sera a un incontro molto atteso per noi e molto significativo. Oggi è la giornata delle donne, quindi non potevamo che iniziare i nostri incontri di cinema con una donna, con una grande artista che abbiamo imparato a conoscere da poco, ma che abbiamo già molto fortemente apprezzato. E con noi per parlarcene è Paolo Bertolin, un critico cinematografico e giornalista, scrittore e produttore cinematografico. Tra i suoi crediti ci sono opere di Fandango e Lab Diaz, ma soprattutto programmatore per diversi festival di cinema, tra cui Cannes e Locarno, e in particolare la Mostra del Cinema di Venezia, con cui collabora dal 2008. In questa veste si occupa soprattutto del cinema australiano e si deve a lui la presenza in concorso di un film nel 2018 che si intitola The Nightingale, la cui regista è Jennifer Kent. E Jennifer Kent è proprio la artista che andiamo ad incontrare oggi, australiana, nata a Brisbane nel 1969, è stata attrice di formazione, sceneggiatrice e regista. E il suo primo film, The Babadook, presentato in anteprima al Sundance, la rivela al mondo e ne fa un caso internazionale. Da subito è stata premiata a New York Critics Awards nel 2014 e il film è stato definito film con forti connotazioni horror e il film più spaventoso negli ultimi tempi. Il film sbanca al botteghino e diventa presto un caso, come dicevo, ma la sua vera natura non è solo suscitare la paura, ma raccontare una favola morale. Nel 2018 arriva il suo secondo film, The Nightingale, che ci racconta l'epopea di una giovane irlandese nella Tasmania di fine Ottocento, un mondo di violenza e di sopraffazione nei confronti delle donne e degli aborigeni. Di questo film la sua autrice ha detto che voleva raccontare una storia di violenza e in particolare le conseguenze della violenza da una prospettiva femminile. Premio speciale, ecco qua vi faccio vedere la foto del film del catalogo di Venezia del 2018, premio speciale della giuria Venezia e premio Marcello Mastroianni a un attore emergente a Baikali Garambar, che interpreta la guida aborigena che accompagna la protagonista nel suo viaggio di vendetta. In preparazione Jennifer Kent ha un thriller, Alice più Frida Forever, con gli Amazing Studios, ma vediamo un po' di che cosa si tratta, vediamo un po', adesso sono sicuramente collegati con noi. I nostri due amici, ecco qua. Hi Jennifer, welcome.
Hi Marina, thank you, thanks very much.
Welcome and ciao Paolo, welcome to
ciao
you
Marina.
too. Okay, now I'm, ecco qua, just a moment because we are unfortunately online. Our festival at Too Common Streaming as everything in the art and in the work nowadays. So, but we hope to come back again, and we hope to welcome Jennifer, you in person, one of this next edition. First of all, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to talk with us today. We are particularly happy that you are here today with us, not only because we greatly admire your cinema, but also because this year's edition of our festival is dedicated to women, to the artists who in cinema and literature firmly speak about violence, both against women and not only against women. Because you speak about rebellion, the independence of women, and above all, about the point of view of women, which too often have no voice. I mentioned in my introduction in Italian about your presence in Venice, in the Venice Film Festival in 2018, where your film has been rewarded with two important prizes. So, I gladly leave the floor to Paolo, who will help us to discover a bit of the secrets of your art, I hope, and to enjoy you as a very interesting director and artist who has made her professional integrity a flag of hers. So thank you for your conversation and happy conversation. We will meet again in 40 minutes. So, okay, bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Marina. Bye.
Thank you so much, Marina, from my side as well, because your thorough introduction allows me to get straight into the discussion with Jennifer, whom I also wholeheartedly thank, because it's really a great pleasure and honor for me to conduct this conversation with you, Jennifer, and it's really fabulous. I'm a big fan of your work, and it's always a fantastic opportunity to chat with the artists you admire. And as a way to break the ice and start this conversation, I wanted to ask you what the starting point for your career as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, was in terms of the influences and the possible sources of inspiration that created your world as an artist, whether they are literary or coming from theater or cinema. Can you tell us a little bit more of what somehow brought you to create your personality as a storyteller?
Well, I have always felt that I was a storyteller. I am a storyteller. And I think even from a very young age, as soon as I learned to read, I would get books out of the library at primary school and direct, find plays and direct them and act in them and get other people in the school to come and see them. And it was really a preoccupation from a very young age, like 7 or 8. And for me, acting and storytelling were one and the same. I love to do both. And then when I finished high school, I went to a place called NIDA, which is our National Institute of Dramatic Art here, where, it's a theatrical training. And I mean, Kate Blanchett went there, Judy Davis, Mel Gibson. It's our premier acting school. And then before that, I'd already studied in my hometown acting for 2 years. So all up, it was a 5-year full-time education, basically just playing the classics. So Shakespeare, Chekhov, Strindberg, Ibsen, these were the works that truly inspired me and sort of made me feel like that's what I really wanted to do. And then it was a matter of, how do I do this, But at drama school, I was very much told, no, you either have to choose acting or you choose directing. And so, it was a different time. And I think I chose acting because I didn't really even understand that a woman could direct a film. It wasn't something in my consciousness. So I started acting professionally after NIDA and really did not like it. And I'm a person who needs to get up and be creative every day and be able to put energy into that. And, anyone who's acted will tell you that it can be a very passive experience. So I gradually, out of frustration for that, I drifted back, thankfully, to my first love, which is writing and directing. So, I feel very fortunate that I had that previous career, though, because I really understand performance, and I love actors. I understand how hard it is. And yeah, so that was a natural progression that I'm really grateful for.
You just mentioned some great classic names from theater. What is it that brought you to switch from the notion of maybe acting, directing, writing on a stage and move into cinema instead, which obviously is much more complicated, involves a lot of trouble in terms of getting your films produced?
Well, I always wanted to. I was always much more interested in film, but it wasn't a natural progression. I did direct a bit of theatre, Again, I didn't love it. I enjoyed it, but I guess it was, finding a way that I could come across to film, and it took a while. I mean, the first thing that I did was, I knew I didn't want to go to film school because I'd studied acting for 5 years, and at the end of it, I hated acting. So I thought, well, I'm not going to go and study film and then end up hating film, because I think by nature I'm quite subversive and I don't do well in schools, and something in me knew that. So, I at the time was very moved by a Lars von Trier film, Dancer in the Dark. And so I wrote to Lars von Trier, which is kind of a long story, but to cut a long story short, he accepted, my proposal to come on set for one day. So I flew from Australia to Sweden for this one day of filming, and then somehow it turned into the entire shoot. And I think, I came away with a sense. Before that, I felt there was a sense of me, us and them. So there are normal people, and then there are these genius filmmakers. And I couldn't find a way mentally how to get there. But I think that was the biggest gift that Lars von Trier gave me, was to actually watch his process and see that, it's hard. It's hard. And it was good to see that, because I thought, okay, if it's hard for him, it's okay if it's hard for me too. And I just kept going. And I kept going and going and, developing lots of scripts. And then eventually the Babadook was the one that stuck. But it certainly wasn't the first.
What was it that impressed you so much about Dancer in the Dark? Do you recall what is maybe the emotion or the scene that really impressed?
I Björk, actually, and her, it was like watching liquid. It was like such an emotional experience, and I'd always felt as a storyteller that I wanted to move people in some direction. Whichever direction that was fine, as long as it moved them and, made them think and feel something. And I really felt that with that film. I remember just jumping up at the end and saying, I want to go and work with this man. I want to go and work with these people. And I'd also seen Festen, the Danish film Festen, and was so impressed by, again, the sort of muscularity of that and the emotional truth of it, and was so moved by that as well. So yeah, I just wanted to go out and go up to the other side of the world and find out what those crazy Danes were doing up there. And I guess that was my film school.
And what did you find? What was your experience on the set?
Well, it was very humbling because I hadn't even made a short film. I just had some guts, I guess, in my email to say this is what I wanted to do, but they had no idea. So of course they weren't going to give me an important role. But I worked in the directing department, assisting, driving actors. And I was fine with that. I was fine to shovel snow in order to see the process. And they had this policy, if someone was going to be there, they needed to make themselves useful. So I did. And it was wonderful. It was really, it gave me the courage to step forward and create that life for myself. And I think too, one thing I saw about, with Lars at the time was his stubbornness, which was also something that, as a woman, I wasn't particularly socialized or comfortable with that part of my personality. But then seeing him in action made me think, okay, it's okay to be that way. And in fact, you have to be to get a unique vision onto the screen, I think.
And the film you were on set was
Dogville.
Dogville, which is a very peculiar film, by the way. I mean, in terms of the staging of the action and the work with the actors, how did that? I mean, did it leave anything to you? This experience of working on this kind of stage, basically, with actors working within painted on the floor spaces and just interacting as if there was a world around them, which is not there actually.
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible vision. Like, what courage to pull that off, you know. And it's something that I admire in not just Lars, but, you know, other filmmakers who have gone before him and since, who display that kind of courage. I think it's diminishing in filmmaking as we get closer to these sort of conglomerations of streaming giants who just seem to want content. You know, you have to almost rail against that, and it's admirable to see. I mean, it's not about liking someone's vision or not. It's really about watching someone fully realize what they saw. It's incredible. So, I mean, I didn't know anything about what the film would be about, and, you know, what I saw is someone just completely following a vision.
In regard to that, I want to jump to an aspect of your cinema, because as in Dogville, we see this full realization of the notion of suspension of disbelief that allows us to project these characters into a world that actually is not there. Your cinema, both in Babadook and in the Nightingale, we are confronted with a world where imagination and reality sometimes merge. The boundaries are quite blurred, to the point that sometimes we are not sure whether we are in real life of these characters or we are in their dreams, in their nightmares. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about this notion of creating this world of cinema where these boundaries are some.
Yeah, I think it's the most interesting part of, you know, filmmaking for me, is creating a unique world that doesn't exist anywhere else. And, you know, although I have seen many sort of more documentary-like films and really appreciate them, it's not a style that I would gravitate towards. You know, I think it was Guillermo del Toro that said in a talk that cinema is closest to dream. And I really think that's true, that it has the way it works and the way it's formed and the way we perceive it can be very dreamlike. And it can be documentary-like and it can be dreamlike. And I'm certainly drawn to that sort of more heightened dream space, for sure.
It's very interesting what you're saying, because this is a dichotomy that academicians have identified in the DNA of cinema since its very beginning, identifying, you know, the Lumire strand, which is the more documentary-like, and the Méliès strand, which is more imaginative, dreamlike. And in fact, in the Babadook, we have excerpts from Méliès films. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I love Méliès. I mean, what a genius. And for so long, there was a long period of his life where he was forgotten. And, you know, that sort of breaks my heart, because we owe him everything, you know. I don't know if this is true, but I read that he approached the Lumiere brothers and said, you know, can I have a camera? And they were like, oh, no, we're not manufacturing these. So he went away and worked it out himself. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But, you know, he was so ingenious. I mean, he was like, he invented so many techniques that we still use, you know, become more sophisticated. But that he created so many unique worlds in every one of his films. And I think I was very drawn to that sort of in-camera style for the Babadook. It was something, you know, I wanted, because I have this really strong belief that when we watch things that are happening in camera, our mind and our brain processes them differently than if they're just, you know, VFX. They feel more real. So much to the annoyance of everyone who worked on the Babadook, I refused to do any post effects. So they were all done in camera and then, you know, treated or smoothed over, wires removed, all of that kind of stuff. You know, I mean, the scene at the end where she's yelling this thing down, walls did move and crack, and, you know, we engineered it all so that that would all happen on set on the day.
Well, this is fabulous to know, this kind of notion that you can still make things with craft, in a very true to life kind of way, even if the film is so deeply rooted into imagination and fantasy. That probably gives it this reality feel to it, even when it steps into these darker corners of the mind, and it seems like it's just in her mind. But that's probably this quality that you struggle for, that allows us to believe what is there is really happening.
Well, if things are heightened, but they, you know, but the emotions remain true, then we really hone in on the feelings and the emotions. And I think it's more terrifying that way. I mean, I could have told a kitchen sink drama or even a good drama about this story of a mother who couldn't love her child. But to me, you know, I guess I asked myself, well, that is at the core of it. What feeling does that provoke in me if I put myself in that woman's shoes? And the biggest feeling that came back was fear. And so I thought, well, this has to be a frightening experience for the audience, because it is for her, and certainly is for the child as well.
I feel like I want to ask something about the Nightingale now, because I feel that in terms of the factual reality surrounding the characters, and the fact that sometimes the imagination, the fantastic elements stem from something that is actually physical and real. In the Nightingale, for me, what is really impressive, and it's really a source of threat but fascination as well, is the landscape, the forest, the trees, this incredible Tasmanian landscapes that are really, really part of not just a setting, a physical setting, but they create a mind space in the film. I wanted to ask you about this, about the choice of the spaces, the locations.
I mean, it is an incredible countryside, and, you know, I mean, I can feel the memory of everything that's happened there too. It's very much, you know, in the environment, both in the towns and out in the landscape. There's a sadness there, actually, and you know, it's not just me who feels it, but also this incredible beauty. And I just knew, I mean, initially before I started writing the film, of course I wasn't going to write it without Aboriginal elder collaboration. It's really a no-no in Australia, but also I would never do that. And so I wanted to, you know, reach out to elders before I even wrote it. And at that time, I went with my nephew, and we together traversed the path that Billy and Claire would take. Of course, we had a car, but, you know, it was about connecting with the landscape. And there was a push to make the film on the mainland, you know, because it was so much cheaper and we didn't have a big budget. And also, you know, I was very stubborn, something I learned from Von Trier. And I said, no, it has to be made on the land where these things happened. It's very, very important for many reasons. And so then, you know, the financiers agreed to that. But then they wanted me to use less locations and make it inside the city or inside the towns. And I again said it's important that we make it in the wilderness because, you know, of what you see on screen. So it was really the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But I feel when I think of the film, I feel like we did, you know, the producers and myself and the crew and the actors, we did everything we could to make it as real and as close to what happened as possible. So, you know, I feel very proud of that.
Well, the result translates beautifully in the film, and the impact, the huge impact it has on its audience is definitely coming also from these very simple choices you made. And in regard to the characters of both the Nightingale and the Babadook, I feel that these characters are faced with great, with complex, deep feelings. And me in particular, what strikes me is this notion of grief and the possibility or the attempt at overcoming a trauma. I don't know if this is how you see their path throughout their narratives, but this is something that really strikes me. And I'm wondering if you see cinema as a way to talk about these, you know, deep feelings, inner feelings, in a way that allows to visualize and to talk about things that are not visual, that are not speakable. I mean, in a way, cinema, in many cases, like with Méliès, gives space to what is not in the physical reality, but it also feels like for these characters is a way to overcome their deep inner feelings, their deep inner struggle.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was when I came up with the idea, or when the idea came to me for the film, you know, I was very disturbed by the violence in the world and how much, and so I guess in that way I was, you know, aware of how much roll-on effect that this violence has and how much trauma that it causes. You know, I think the grief and trauma that people may see in the Babadook is an individual private hell, whereas in the Nightingale, you know, it blossoms or blooms. You know, it's a terrible bloom outwards to a collective trauma, you know, that sits at the heart of what it means to be an Australian. And so I really wanted to make the film. Well, I didn't want to make it, actually, but I felt I needed to make it. And you know, if I was going to talk about violence, it needed to be in the context that made sense to me and my past and my history. So, and what was the other question, Paolo? Was that about how, what impact that violent, or what impact these subjects have on an audience? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah. Well, I would like to also, because these characters and their struggle to overcome their inner feelings or the feelings that are caused by a situation that brings them to the edge are obviously not the most likable, and their choices, their actions sometimes feel like oh, why is she or he doing this? It's putting an audience to a quite unsettling position. And I was wondering, what, if ever you think of your audience, what kind of reaction you would like these characters and their lives, their experience translating to the audience?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm not able to control how an audience will feel, but what I was aware of is, you know, I guess I asked myself the question, how does one remain a loving human being in the worst situation. And so while the story, for many, of course, is confronting, I mean, it certainly was to read these true accounts and to research, but can you imagine how the people living it, how they felt? You know, so it's this so terribly violent world that really did exist in our history, and we're still living with the repercussions of that. But it was always a film heading towards the light, you know, a story heading towards understanding and towards the light. And that was extremely important to me, you know, because the idea of making a film with that kind of subject matter in that kind of world and not having it be about love, I couldn't get up to make that film every day. So, you know, yes, it's a tough story, you know, it's a tough history, and it's a tough world we live in now. And that's what I was seeing. And that's I guess the reason I made it, because I don't see that we've progressed maybe as much as I would hope that we could.
Did you feel that Australian audiences or the Australian public in general reacted in a way that was sorry if I use this word, but satisfying to you in regard to what the Nightingale was uncovering? Or, you know, it's something that kind of opens up or reopens up a wound and tells us stories that are deeply disturbing, but also it's not like the film is pointing fingers. It's really trying to, as you said, understand what these characters felt. So I was wondering if the discourse around the film was also understanding towards that kind of situation.
I mean, worldwide, there was really an extreme response both ways to the film. But I have to say, in Australia, apart from sort of the more mainstream journalist response, which is, you know, quite predictably, quite predictable, I felt that people who saw the film, you know, on the whole, I mean, I was at many screenings here in Australia, and they were really, you know, very, very positive about it. And I was so heartened by that, because I feel, you know, when I was a child, this was not the case at all. And now I think, you know, and I heard from many Australians about it, and how people were saying it's time now. We need these stories out in the world. And, you know, it was a very moving thing to go with my elder Palawa Tasmanian advisor and collaborator, Uncle Jim Everett, and go to these screenings and talk afterwards. And, you know, it was part of a healing. And he always talked about that. You know, he said it's a tough history and it's a shared history, and we need to shed some light on it. And I think it got more complicated in other countries that aren't, you know, that aren't as aware of our history. You know, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing, because it didn't happen everywhere. It didn't happen in America. I mean, it's certainly, you know, there was slavery, there was African people brought out. It was a different scenario, but they didn't have convicts. They didn't have this history. So, you know, I found there was a lot of antagonism towards the film there, and also a lot of praise for the film. But, you know, I was kind of shocked. But, you know, it's part of being a filmmaker, and you have to have the courage to accept what comes back when you put something out into the world. And that's why it's important to make work you know, I truly believe in, because if you imagine making something you don't really feel much for, and then getting you know, sort of negativity back, it's much harder.
Well, in order to bring to the big screen this vision that you stubbornly pursue, one of the most important factors, I guess, is to work with the actors. And this brings us back to your own training as an actress, but also to the fact that the actors you're working with are faced with a challenge because they themselves have to deal with these complex, difficult characters. How is your work with actors? How was your work with Essie Davies on the Babadook, and how it was with Hashim Franciosi, sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right, on the Nightingale? Because these are characters that are faced with really extreme emotions. As you said earlier, we're talking about a mother who's struggling to love her son, who's not able to love her son, and with a woman who is faced with a terrible trauma of seeing her husband and her daughter being killed and striving to get a revenge for that.
Yes, and who herself is, you know, is racist and has this ignorance as well. You know, I'm very interested in complex characters, and it's not something. I mean, it's common in European film, I think, you know, to have complex characters. Not so much in Australian and American films. But for me to, you know, my duty to the character is to make them as true and complex and fully fleshed out as possible, to make them real human beings. And then my relationship with actors is paramount to me. It's absolutely, I mean, you know, visuals, camera setups, all of these things are also incredibly important. But my work with actors, I need to be there completely for them, you know, and hold their hand either figuratively or literally if I need to. And we go there together. You know, I think I reassure my actors that I will be there. I'll push them, and I do. I push them very hard, but there's always love there. So I've never had an actor rebel yet. You know, I've had them feeding back that it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm so happy for that. I mean, you know, it's documented out there already, but I'll say again that, you know, with Noah Wiseman as he was 5, you know, that little boy who played Samuel in the Babadook, and he needed to be protected, you know, and so every night at the end of our shooting day, we would put the Babadook in a box and lock it up and put it in the you know, like in the studio, and he would know that he was safe. And, you know, initially with Noah, is a very, very beautiful child, a very special little boy. And, you know, I took him to the zoo and I told him the children's story, the children's version of the Babadook, and he was listening and really understanding and just kept saying, oh, wow, oh, wow. And then, you know, and I said, so Sam is the hero, you know, and he had a lot of empathy. So I would say, can you imagine what it's like to be seeing this thing and for your mother not to believe you? And it just made him so upset and angry, you know. And then once we hooked into that together, we were on that journey together, and I just protected him with my life, you know. But I didn't treat him like some people may treat a child. Oh, he wouldn't understand. He fully understood, and he was a very sort of conscious member of the team. And, you know, I remember his mother, who's a child psychologist, saying to him, oh, Noah, you never concentrate this much at school. Like, you're really focused. You never. And he said, yeah, but Mum, this is important. So somehow he understood his role. He knew he was the hero of the film, and he understood the importance of it. So, I mean, you know, that's one relationship I have with one actor, but every actor I work with, I try. It's very important to me to have a relationship, even down to extras. You know, I won't cast an extra without meeting them first and talking to them and telling them what the film's about. So it's sort of labor, it's time intensive, but it pays off to me. It's really important.
So it seems like you're not only stubborn, but you're also very meticulous. I mean, like every aspect of a film, like choosing even an extra, goes through a process where you feel like this little role has to be embodied by someone who understands and who is there in real. And this seems to apply to all the aspects.
I mean, it may seem, is this necessary? To me, it is, because, say, for example, in the Nightingale, there's these opening scenes with maybe 25 soldiers in this very small outpost, and none of them have lines, but all of their faces, some of them, I mean, they had to look like these sort of Flemish paintings, they had to look like real soldiers who lived in this very barren outpost in the middle of nowhere. And so I needed to include them and help them understand who they were and their story. And they were a joy. None of them were actors, and they were a joy to work with. And I think that those things show on screen, and when I was an actor, I was in a TV series for 2 years, and the extras came in and they never knew what they were doing in a scene. Like, they'd walk past with some papers and they had no idea. So I used to go and talk to them and tell them, look, this is what's happening in the scene. And then they enjoyed it. It brought the scene to life. And I just think, as a director, those things are incredibly important and undervalued. Not by all directors, but yeah, by some.
I think this is a really marvelous aspect of filmmaking, how because it's a collective work, when everybody is kind of attuned and they are playing on the same notes, then the result is something that truly translates to the screen. And in regard to this, maybe the very final question I would like to ask is how do you translate this now into your next project? Because maybe you're researching and writing and working on something that will be on the big screen next, but again requires a lot of time, because actually it seems like it takes a lot of time for you from one film to another.
I think the time is due to financing, really, rather than the time it takes to write. I think I'm pretty quick, at writing. And I've had, my next film I've had written since 2016. So it's been, finally we've found someone to step forward and finance it on the level that it needed to be made. It couldn't be very low budget. And that's something I'm casting at the moment called Alice and Frida Forever. And that's a love story set in Memphis in the 1890s. So yeah, that's the next one, which, is working with teenage girls as the leads. So I'm sure there'll be challenges there, but lots of rewards as well, I think.
Will you be shooting in Memphis? Will you be how do you recreate the space of Memphis in the 1890s?
Well, it doesn't. Memphis in the 1890s, as it was, doesn't exist anymore. Memphis looks. There's very few Victorian buildings left. So we're shooting in Cincinnati, which has a lot of beautiful old Victorian buildings, private homes and public spaces as well. So yeah, heading there. We'll be shooting in September.
Well, thanks a lot for this insight into your next project, which we definitely look forward to seeing on the big screen. And I see that Marina is back, so we have to wrap the session.
It was such a pleasure to listen to your conversation and the things you told us, Jennifer, which showed us Yes, as Paolo said, meticulously. I think it comes from your experience of being an actress, and of course, not only being an actress and being a woman, because I think it's a different approach to take care of all aspects, and all the human relation, which are also developing during the creative process in making film. I think it's very important, and this you can feel in the final product. You can feel this vibration of the creative process, which is on the back, no? Of the
Thank you.
making the film. And also, I'm very curious. I would also have a lot of questions to you. First of all, why this interest in the 19th century and the history, and what you were telling while you were telling the history of Nightingale. I was thinking that we Italians also have a big problem with our own history in terms of explaining the dark sides of the colonization in the 20th century, at the end of 18th century in Africa. What we have done has not been explained at all, almost at all, in cinema. And I think we should go back to those times and those violence, especially because we are very well known in the world as the good people, Italians, the good people.
Yeah, you know? Right. Yeah.
And it's a kind of stereotype which
we also were very good at creating that kind of image. We can say we manufacture it very well, and we believe it in ourselves.
I think Australia could say that as well, that we get away with this lucky, happy-go-lucky image of the surfer and the outback, and everything's, relaxed and friendly, which is one side. But yeah, I felt for me it was a story of my life. Like, I needed to tell this story because it affects who we are now. And I think the colonial story is the same worldwide. It's a construct that's built on violence and control. And we only have to look at the world and where we are now to realize that we're not free of it. We're not free of what caused it. So my way is to make a film that shows just the reality of it, to really, help people maybe to wake up. And sometimes when things are tough, we need a tough approach. So, but always with love at the center. There has to be a heart to a story like that. Otherwise, we couldn't bear it. It would become unbearable.
So, and especially we as a Noirin Festival are really can't wait to see your next film, as I've read it's going to be a thriller. Is it? It's true?
I wouldn't say thrilling, but it's something. It's about love that, turns into an obsession. I think it's a heartbreaking story.
Every love story is a thriller at the end.
Is Romeo and Juliet a thriller? If Romeo and Juliet is a thriller, then maybe this is
the darkest one. The darkest one.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Jennifer Kent. It was a pleasure to talk with you and to listen to you. Thank you, Paolo, for having leaded us into the conversation. And I wish you, Jennifer, very good work. And I hope to see your film as soon as possible. And to you, Paolo, too. Thank you for being with us. And
thank you so much, Paolo. It's so lovely to reconnect again after Venice.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, also for your patience and for your wonderful answers. It was really great.
Welcome. You're welcome. Hope to talk again soon.
Ciao to everybody.
Hey, ciao. Bye.